Hey, Tom Bartels from GrowFoodWell.com, and today I'm out in the garden looking for seeds that are ready to come in so that I can save those seeds for perpetual harvest and planting out year after year. These are open pollinated seeds of varieties that are very diverse, and I wanted to do a quick video to show you some really simple ways to save seed. And it becomes more important nowadays when there's pressure on the system. Obviously, many of you have experienced that the seed companies were under a lot of pressure to supply seed last year and last winter for this spring's planting. And I think they're going to still be pressured to fulfill all the orders coming this January. So it becomes more obvious that saving your own seed is a very valuable method of continually harvesting food every year without having to buy seeds. A good example of that is I harvest about 1,000 pounds of food out of my garden every year in the 130-day growing season that we have. If I was just buying the base crops of what I save for food, it'd be less than 40 or 45 bucks a year to grow 1,000 pounds of food. That's because mostly I'm saving all the seeds of the plants that I can save that are open pollinated so I can plant the same thing out next year. And I'm going to go over some quick methods on how to save those seeds so you can do the same wherever you're growing and have perpetual harvests as well. Now, this isn't a full seed saving course right now. I'm just going over a quick overview of some of the easy seeds you can walk around your garden and save now so you can plant them out next year. So let's go out in the garden really quick and see what seeds are here that I can collect. Now here I have a few lettuce plants that I went ahead and let go to seed. This one is almost at the stage where you would clip the entire head and pull it off to dry it. But it's really simple to harvest lettuce seed once they tuft out like this. You simply just pull off the top of that flower tuft, and inside, right below the fluff, if you just grab that fluff and pinch it in your fingers and twist it just a little bit, lo and behold, your lettuce seeds will fall out. And you can plant these directly right away and have a late fall planting or save them for next season. Most lettuce plants are frost tolerant, so you can get a really good late planting and have lettuce in the early winter as well. So for those of you that are growing sunflowers, they're kind of fun to have around. They're not necessarily a food source, except for the chickens, which I do feed them to. And they're great for attracting beneficial pollinators to the garden, and they're fun to have around. Especially these 10 or 12 footers. There, the seeds are pretty easy to see. You just save those, put it on a windowsill in your garage where it won't get rained on, and let those seeds dry a couple weeks. And you can pull as many of those seeds as you like to grow for next year in perpetuity. You can just keep saving these seeds and you never have to buy sunflower seeds again. You could roast them and eat them yourself or feed them to your chickens. All kinds of birds will come to your garden to feed off of this, but sunflowers are really fun to have around. Now, corn, of course, is a relatively easy crop to save seed on. In this case, we have what's called a Hopi blue corn. It's a flower corn, and I've been growing this for over a decade using the same seed from the previous year. And so all you need to do is take a mature ear of corn and go ahead and save that, dry it in a windowsill, wait till it's completely dry, then you can take it off the cob, save it in a glass jar, plant it out next year. And on one of those ears, and this one included, there's roughly 300 kernels, so that's 300 seeds that you can plant out, which is the sum total of all the 300 or so plants that I put out this year on 300 square feet. So 1 year's worth of corn will grow the entire crop next year. It's incredibly efficient to save those seeds. This is a flour corn that you grind down and make cornmeal out of, and I use it for cornmeal pancakes and cornbread for the winter. So flour corn is a no-brainer, and it's really fun to grow. Plus, you get all this biomass and carbon for the compost that helps create more nutrition and fertility for next year's crops. On the cucumbers, you typically want to let your mature fruit that you're going to save seed from go ahead and over mature. So I would let this stay on the vine, get a really good example of that particular cucumber, let it grow on the vine, kind of mark it as it's one not to be picked. And you want to let it over ripen. It'll turn yellow, it'll start just getting limp, and then you pull it off the vine, and that's the seed that's going to be the best on cucumbers to mature to the point where you want to save those seeds. You just slice it open, scoop out the seeds, dry them out. Again, these are Market More cucumbers. They're an heirloom variety, which is open pollinated, and they'll grow out the following year. So this basil is going to seed. It's not quite ready yet, but I'm going to let this flower just continue, and it'll produce copious amounts of seed that I can then use to plant basil out next year. Here I have several varieties of bush beans or dry beans that I'm growing out for winter use, and these are super easy to save. You just let them get to full maturity, and then the pods themselves will dry out right on the bush, and then you come back and pick them, and you'll find all your beans on the inside that you can use in soups or just beans and refried beans or burritos or whatever you use your beans for. There's all kinds of varieties of beans, and of course I can plant those directly out the following year. So beans are a wonderful food source, especially for long-term storage, and they're relatively cheap in the market, but of course, as we saw during the COVID crisis, they're hard to find sometimes. It's one of those security foods that people buy at the market and sometimes they run out. So in this case, you have your own beans, you grow them out every year, you save the ones you want to eat and save some for planting out the following season. Now, one of the great benefits of planting beans is they fix nitrogen in your soil. So every year you grow beans, you're adding nitrogen. They actually fix nitrogen from thin air and put it in their roots and store it in the soil, and it's more nitrogen the following year for whatever you're planting in that particular space. They're super nutritious for you. They come in all kinds of varieties. They're really heart healthy, they're full of protein, and they're really great to have around. So grow some beans next year. You'll be glad you did. So here I've got a Georgia Candy Roaster winter squash. It's in the Cucurbita maxima family, and it's basically a Hubbard squash, and you can tell by that blue tip there, and they happen to be the only maxima squash that I'm planting out this year, so I know that they're not cross-pollinating. Winter squash tend to cross-pollinate, especially if you have the same family in your plot. So if I put two of the maxima of the three main families of squash, if I put two of the maximas in the same area, they'd cross-pollinate, and the seeds from that cross-pollination would not create that true fruit the following year. It'll keep its flavor for up to 5 months in your root cellar or your basement or your pantry or wherever you keep it, so it's a wonderful squash to try out. Again, that's the Georgia Candy Roaster. And again, like any winter squash, when you scoop those seeds out of the actual squash, you want to dry them completely until they snap. You don't want them to bend. You take the seed and you should hear it crack or snap. That's when they're dry enough to save for the long term. So here I have some arugula going to seed, and these are quite simple. You just let these seed pods dry. Once they're fully mature, they'll completely dry to the point where you can just crack them off, and they're light brown and kind of papery, at which point you can break the seeds open. So there's the arugula seed, and you can go ahead and dry that further and plant it out the following year. So these potatoes here don't have any seed per se, but the potato itself is the seed potato for the following year. So what I'll do is, after the plant material above ground on the potatoes dies back, I let it wait a few more weeks for the skins to harden on the potato underground. Then I harvest those, bring them up, and I'll save the largest potatoes for next year's seed. I've got 2 different beds this size of purple Peruvian potatoes this year, and they're a wonderful nutrient-rich potato to have. They've been propagated for over 6,000 years. It's a little smaller than the Yukon Gold potatoes or russet potatoes that we're used to seeing in the markets, but they have many times the nutrient density per pound than most other potatoes, so that's why I grow them. I look for nutrient density per square foot, so this is a really efficient way to grow nutrition in a small space, is by growing purple Peruvians, and then I'll take the largest of those potatoes, save those for the seed crop the following year. I'll keep them in the root cellar, plant them out in the spring, and lo and behold, you get perpetual purple Peruvian potatoes. So these are seeds from the Orach plant. This is what I plant for my spinach alternative that has lower oxalic acid amounts in the plant itself, so you can eat copious amounts of it. And it creates copious amounts of seeds, as you can see. This is a very small portion of the Orach seeds that I picked out of this bed behind me. I let them dry in the garage for a week or so, and now, if you'll notice, they just crush right off the plant, and you're ready to save those seeds. So let me give you a close-up of that and how easy it is to save those seeds. So these would be planted out either right now in the fall for a late fall crop, or I could save them, which is what I'm going to do, for next spring. Now I have tens of thousands of these seeds because I had 1 row of Orach, so I have way more seed than I can use. So this plant is a really good one if you like free winter greens or free greens for the summer planting. It doesn't bolt very quickly, but when it does, it just goes off into these huge seed pods. So you have as many seeds for Orach as you'd ever want, and you can continually plant it out, and it's a wonderfully nutritious green, much like spinach. And if you've never tried it, go ahead and plant some Orach. That's O-R-A-C-H. It comes in green and red colored leaves, and either way, it's a wonderful nutrient-dense green that you can grow just about anywhere. And of course, everyone's favorite, the tomato. Now, saving tomato seeds is just a little bit trickier, but it's really easy once you understand the method. You want to take a super ripe tomato, especially the ones that ripen early. So right at the beginning of the season, the plants that produce the biggest, earliest fruit, those are the best ones to save. Tomato seeds have a germination inhibitor on them. It's a natural gel that coats the seed that staggers that germination so that if that tomato rots and falls naturally into the soil, it will wait until the following spring before it germinates, because it doesn't want to germinate right before winter. So that's what that adaptation is for the tomato plant. But for us, when we save those seeds and plant them, we want them to germinate as fast as possible. So in order to take that gel coat off, you simply put those seeds with some pulp in the bottom quarter or half inch of a yogurt container and add about an inch of water. Let them sit at room temperature for about 4 days. And what you'll do is propagate a mold growth on the surface of that water, and that tells you the mold is breaking down that gel coat of the seeds. And that's going to allow us to remove that gel coat naturally. Then we rinse off those seeds really well under the water stream into a strainer or a sieve, and then take those rinsed seeds, spread them out on a pan underneath the windowsill that gets some sun, and leave them for about a week. You want to get them super dry. Then you want to roll those seeds in your hands a little bit, break apart the ones that are stuck together, dry them some more. You want to make sure these are completely dry. Once they are, then you can put them in a paper envelope, store them in a cool place, and you can plant them out next year and have tomatoes in perpetuity. So then you don't have to buy the seeds or rely on a market that may not have seeds for you next year. That's how you save your tomato seeds. So it becomes self-evident that saving some of your seeds is a really good approach to helping ensure future harvests, especially during stressed times like COVID-19, when some of the seed companies are stressed out. And it's just one of the regenerative approaches that we use here to grow food well. We align with natural systems so that even when there's certain variables that aren't working, the rest of the garden has momentum and the food can continue growing, and we grow food more easily. That's why these biointensive methods and these regenerative methods work so well, because they have the diversity, the soil food web, the living systems here that just grow food year after year. I've been growing for 20 years now in this location and consistently getting harvests like this and like this and like this. And it's really gratifying to have that kind of successful yield come in every year. It's no longer a question. It's just choosing which food I want to grow the following season. So that's part of why we use these universal methods that work just about anywhere. You adapt a few of the variables and then grow the food that's acclimatized where you live and grow the stuff that you like to eat. I've been teaching this for the last 5 years at growfoodwell.com, and in the main curriculum we go over this as well as lots of other concepts that make growing food that much easier for people all over the place. And that program has grown. We now have members in all 50 states and I think 16 countries at last count. So it's really a blast for me to be able to see all these people using universal concepts that we teach here in different places around the world to grow food well. And it's become apparent after COVID that there's even more benefits because you don't have to rely on the seed markets as much if you have your own seeds on site. And that's the reason I decided to expand the program this year and open a brand new monthly membership. It's called the Garden Club, and I'm going to be teaching more and more of these methods on a monthly basis all throughout the year. And each month I'll put out different, very short, concise, step-by-step videos over my shoulder on how I grow over 30 to 40 different vegetables throughout the seasons here in Southwest Colorado. I'll also be going over a lot of the soil amendments, composting, all the stuff I teach in the regular program, but in more detail. So I'll have time to be reflexive and adapt to the people's needs that are in the monthly program. The inspirations for growing food come from different places. Maybe you have a small garden with just 1 or 2 beds, or you're growing a 1/4 acre of food for a CSA program. These methods are universal, and we've got members in all those spectrums and sizes and locations of gardens. What's nice about the program is it builds confidence in people so they can really feel comfortable with the methods and feel confident that they're going to get the yields and the harvest that they're looking for each year. And that's what we do, is get people to that level of comfort wherever they may be, whatever they're growing. I may look like I'm on a farm, but I'm growing this in my backyard. And depending on what you like to eat, you can grow those foods where you live that are acclimated to your particular climate. So each month you get new tools to figure out how you can apply them wherever you happen to live. I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a blast because there's a really good interactive community of diverse people that are all focused on just growing food well. And that's a fun place to be. We can help each other out. We're going to talk about a diverse group of subjects all about growing food well. That's it for now. Cheers.